Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show, where we help you make the wisest and most profitable decisions. My name is Dr. Gleb Tsipursky. I'm the CEO of Disaster Avoidance Experts, the future of work consultancy that sponsors the Wise Decision Maker Show. And today with me is Jeetu Patel, who is the Executive Vice President of Security and Collaboration at Cisco. And we'll be talking about hybrid work and the return to office mandates. So I want to ask you, first of all, Jeetu, how do you think the back to office mandates will impact worker productivity? I've seen that my clients have helped 23 companies by now transition to hybrid work and remote work. And we've definitely seen when my clients do choose to have a return to office mandate, that does cause a decrease in productivity. That's my experience. What's your experience?
So firstly, Dr. Gleb, thank you for having me on the show. It's great to be here. And I think this is such an important topic to talk about. One of the things that we found, at least in our research and seeing what, both within Cisco as well as our customer base, is that mandates don't work as well as creating magnets where people want to come into work, because there's certain scenarios where they can't fulfill those requirements from being being at home and remote. And so it's a far better way to go out and attract talent to come into work and impact their productivity in a positive direction when you don't have to kind of require and mandate people coming in. Now, there is a network effect to the office, because it's only worthwhile to go into the office if many people are in the office. Otherwise, there's no point going to the office.
Right.
So having some kind of guidelines, making sure that there's certain aspects or kind of venues because of which people are coming in at the same time, creates that network effect. And then that actually increases productivity, that increases the value that people have coming into work. But I think just the dictatorial mandate tends to not work as well on employee morale, employee productivity. And it might work okay right now because the market's a little bit down, and the job market, there's been some job losses that have happened. But the moment that starts to pick up, you'll find that people aren't going to, the best of the best people aren't going to stay there, adhering to a mandate. They're going to be there because they actually find value in engaging in certain kind of forums together, because of which they go into work.
Yeah, let's talk about that best people and productivity question. So what we found when we think about the term quiet quitting, it means people kind of disengaging, not doing their best work. And what I found with other clients is that when there is a mandate, we definitely notice an increase in quiet quitting among the people who are coming into the office, meaning people's productivity drops, they're not as engaged, they're on various metrics, they're not as engaged, they're less willing. So for example, you said that you come to the office to do collaboration. That's definitely the case, and we should dive into that. But what I found at other clients who do have a mandate is that many people come to the office and they shut their office door and they're not really willing to collaborate. And in other cases, if they have a cubicle or an open office, they come to the office and then they put on their headphones, like don't bother me sort of state. And they're not very willing to collaborate, partially because they resent being asked to come to the office and ending up doing the same sort of stuff that they will be doing at home anyway. What's your experience with that quiet quitting question?
Yeah, the way I see it is there's two modes that we work in. We work in a mode where we have to have some focused time to deep think, to get work done, to make sure that we are very intentional about where we're going to spend our time. We're not going to be largely interrupt driven, and we're going to have kind of thoughtful responses to things that are thrown our way. And that requires that you actually have the least amount of interrupts and the most amount of time to get into the zone so that you can think. Those tend to be really good times to work at home. Now, by the way, not for everyone, because there might be people that don't have the right conditions. I know you and I are lucky right now. We're both sitting in spacious, beautiful offices, and we're privileged to have that. But there are people that don't have that. And when they don't, then they might want to go into the office for some portion of time. But there's a certain class of people who will enjoy working at home for that focused time. Historically, that was something that people expected you to come into work for focused time. What we found is actually the home's a much better environment in certain cases. On the other hand, the role that has changed of the office is more collaborative work where you need to go out and bounce ideas off of other people in a non-transactional way is way better done in person than it is done over a video medium. And let me give you an example of why that's the case. I think one of the challenges with video is it's a very transactional medium. And what I mean by transactional is there's always an agenda, there's a definitive beginning, there's an end, and the goal is productivity. How quickly can we get this meeting done so that we can get done what we need to get done and move on to the next thing? And that kind of a structured agenda, what that does is it actually creates a that's very good for certain class of certain types of work. It's not at all good for things which are more creative in nature. Which require brainstorming. That's where you need a little bit more wander time. You might need some more wander time in relationship building. And so having the space to have some wander time in a human to human interaction, the wander time is actually very naturally baked in, because if I'm at a coffee station sitting around talking to you, I'm wandering for a moment. Like there's no agenda. What am I going to talk to you for the 2 minutes at the coffee station? But if you're in a video conference, if you have a 30-second lull in a video conference, immediately someone who's facilitating the meeting will say, well, any other questions? Or we can give you back 10 minutes, right? And that give you back 10 minutes is where you would actually, in a in-person meeting, you might actually take that 10 minutes and get to know each other a little bit better. So one, we have to get better at wander time on the transactional medium, which is video, but we also have to get better at knowing that when there's something that's needed, that going into the office makes a lot of sense. Going into the office for collaborating, going into the office where you have to have high bandwidth exchanges with lots of people for certain things like offsites and for planning meetings, and all of those could make a lot of sense. And you have to kind of keep those in mind as you're going through it. And in my mind, the beauty and the advantage of hybrid work is the fact that you can do both. You don't have to be tied to one model versus the other.
Yeah, absolutely agreed. And there are some ways of solving. So I have several clients who do almost fully remote work, and what they have found, and some other clients who do hybrid work, what they have found is that there are ways of getting that time, spontaneous interaction time, like having coffee roulette, where you're randomly matched with people to just have coffee meetings virtually for half an hour, and the company sponsors the coffee or whatever, your lunch that you have, or having video game sessions, or having escape room experiences, virtual escape rooms. There are ways of solving for that, but I think it's definitely the case that overall, for most people, those things are better done in the office. So there's a need to balance the way of people coming to the office versus people spending their time remotely. And I was telling you before the show that I'm just doing focus groups for a client and figuring out what is going to be their long-term hybrid work policy. And we definitely, in the focus group, there are some people who are complaining about the idea of having a common day in the office, because they're like, well, I want to just come in whenever I want to come in and just collaborate with the people I want to collaborate. The problem with that is that it doesn't allow room for that sort of spontaneous interaction. And it doesn't allow room for other people who might need you, benefit from collaborating with you and just coming over and chatting to you. They were not going to be able to do that if you're not in the office. So thinking about something like a common day a week when everyone is expected to come in if they don't have an emergency or if they're not on vacation, to what extent are these coordinative actions beneficial for a hybrid work model?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I found is we tend to revert back to the mean on hybrid work, which is, hey, 3 days at work, 2 days at home, or whatever that distribution is going to be. But the true benefit of hybrid work and the true benefit of being able to work in a distributed mode is being able to access talent pools from anywhere in the world. And so if I want to access talent pools, someone in the village in Bangladesh should be able to participate in a global economy with the same level of efficacy as someone in the heart of Silicon Valley. And when you can allow for that to happen, the structure of humanity changes for the better in some pretty material ways. So I would find it to be really sad if after the 3 years of COVID that we've gone through, the COVID crisis that we've gone through, if we just reverted back to the way things were prior to COVID. Like that would be unfortunate, because one of the things that COVID made us realize is, there are certain tasks that can in fact be done in a remote way and does not require physical geographic presence, which is one of the most non-inclusive things you can do in the world, because the dependence on a geography to be able to participate in a global economy just seems like it's unfair. Because what happens if you don't have access to the geography? Now you can't participate in adding value. And so in my mind, there's nuance over here, which is, I think there's going to be some time when people work remote. There'll be times when people come together. I think each company will have to decide what that is. But you do want to make sure that you support for distributed workforces that can come together at times and that can be dispersed at times. And that the next generation of leaders, in my mind, cannot be people who don't know how to build relationships virtually, deep relationships virtually. Because the excuse that's always given is, well, you can't really build tight bonds virtually, and so therefore you need to be together. It's like, or we can learn how to build tight bonds virtually, and that would actually create a step function improvement in human participation and the quality of humans that can actually be assigned to solve a problem. I'll give you an example. When I joined Cisco, it was right in the midst of COVID. I didn't see any of my peers for the first 9 months. I'd never met them. By the time I met them, we were all very close friends. Because we had done enough effort to say, let's have happy hours in the evening where we can sit down and talk about something and get a cup of coffee and just have a conversation. And we wandered, and that created context, and that created familiarity, and that familiarity created trust, and that trust allowed for comfortable conflict. And that conflict then allowed us to push each other and make sure that there were better ideas. That, I think, is really important in hybrid work. And if you always require that can only be built when we meet in person physically, then I think we're being far too myopic in the way in which we're thinking about this thing. You and I have never met in person, and we are having a very high bandwidth conversation without having that much prep. And wouldn't it be nice if over time, as we did more of this, that you and I built a relationship together? And it didn't have to be that we had to meet in person to feel like, Dr. Gleb is someone that I can actually talk to about something.
Right.
And that's a good thing. And we should actually try to see if we can encourage that. And I feel like that's the move that humans have to go towards, rather than being overly closed-minded. I just need everyone back in the office because we're not collaborating well, or we don't think the productivity is high. So we got to make sure that we keep an eye on people, and that inspection is going to be needed, because I just don't think humans do their best work that way.
I think that's definitely insightful, and I agree that humans don't do their best work that way. I think to add to the benefits of people building relationships remotely, so when I work with clients, something that they have found is in building relationships with external clients and others, they're able to reach people much more easily and at higher levels in the organization, in other organizations, who they can now call, because it's much more convenient to a video conference meeting than to have an in-person meeting. So the convenience of these interactions, these remote interactions, allow people to be much more available who would not otherwise be available. So there's much more potential for these sorts of conversations to even happen in the first place, in the way that conversations would not have happened in person.
That's a great point. I mean, look, I'll tell you this. We are flying all of our senior leaders in the company next week to come to an offsite location. And this week, I've chosen to work from home because I was in Israel for part of the week, and I just got back, and I just wanted to make sure I spent some time at home.
Sure.
And that combination of being able to have the flexibility to do that makes me superbly more productive than what I would have been if I had to just be in the office the next day after. I landed at 6 a.m. and I was on a call by 8 a.m. I wouldn't have been able to do that if I had to go to the office. It would have taken me another 45 minutes to commute there. It would have been, I would be tired. I wouldn't be, so like there's aspects that I could have taken a nap for an hour in the afternoon, but then gotten back up again and done some stuff. Like those are things that allow me to actually be relaxed when I'm working. And that's just, it's an important dimension to keep in mind. So.
That's an additional good point. So now, as we're coming to the end of our conversation, what do you think is the future of hybrid and remote work?
I think the future includes us. There's a few things that I think will be materially different. People of any geography should be able to communicate well with each other.
Mhm.
People that speak any language should not have language as a barrier. People should not always be constrained by the availability that we mutually have to talk to each other synchronously, because asynchronous communication will get so much more effective. I'll tell you, we have a product that we built called Vidcast during COVID. Vidcast is a product where you can actually record a video, send it to the other person, and then they can comment on the video, and you would know exactly how many people have viewed it. You have permissioning on the video, send it only to the people in my team, send it to the people in my company, send it to people outside. I can then make sure that I have kind of reactions in the video that I can watch. I can see how many people have viewed the video, how many people haven't. So when I have 12,000 people on my team, when I need to communicate to them, I send them a vidcast saying, hey, this is what I did last week. It's fantastic. Everyone actually gets to be in touch with me, and it didn't take me that much effort. I just go out and record it and I send it out. And so that will be part of the future of communication. And then the other big area that we think is going to be massively accretive is artificial intelligence.
Oh, yeah.
Because the way in which conversations transpire and what you'll be able to do, there's going to be so many unique use cases. And by the way, artificial intelligence got a massive boost because of generative AI and natural language kind of understanding. But even outside of that, there was a bunch of stuff that we were doing. But the generative side of it actually completely opens up a whole new world of possibilities, especially for data that's proprietary data to the company. So, for example, wouldn't it be nice if I had a lot more kind of context on the data in my generative AI model, where I could ask specific things about what happened in a meeting, and I'd be able to get something, and summarizing the meetings and all of those aspects. So like, we are going to see a lot of innovation happen over there that you should keep your eyes out for, because you'll see some announcements coming out from us here pretty soon now. So that's a huge area of innovation that we'll see, and beyond the things that we've heard around real-time translation and noise removal and background noise and video optimizations and all of those things which have been happening with AI. But it'll open up a whole new set of possibilities because of generative models that have actually been become commonplace because of ChatGPT.
That's really exciting. It's something we'll all be keeping an eye on. Thank you for sharing your expertise, Jeetu.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Gleb, and hopefully we'll get to do this again.
Absolutely. And thank you to the listeners for checking out another episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. Please make sure to leave a review wherever you check this out. It helps others discover the show and helps us improve the show. And make sure to subscribe to the show, again, wherever you saw the show or listen to the show. All right, everyone. I look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Wise Decision Maker Show. In the meantime, the wisest and most profitable decisions to you, my friends.